Welcome to The Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Welcome to a special RCC STORE Bonus 2022 episode of The Voice of Retail podcast. In these STORE bonus episodes, we'll be meeting the keynote speakers that will be joining us to share their insights and wisdom with the Canadian retail industry. We talk about their background, business, and a preview of the knowledge they will be sharing at Canada's most significant in-person retail event of the year. In this episode, the one and only Paco Underhill, breakthrough author of the classic Why We Shop, still essential reading for retailers today, and his latest book, How We Eat, The Brave New World of Food and Drink. Let's listen in now. Paco, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing just fine, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited to speak to you. I'm a follower of your book and your writings. You and I, we were talking off mic. We haven't had the chance to meet yet, but hopefully that will come soon enough. So I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. So welcome.
I'm delighted to be here with you.
Now, where am I finding you in the world today?
At the moment, I am looking out my office window in Madison, Connecticut at a luscious end of spring in New England.
Nice.
The trees are out. The blooms are out. I just got back from Miami, where it was sunny and hot, and I am very happy to be back here in my New England home.
Well, you will be appearing virtually, bringing the power of your insights to STORE 2022. So I want to jump on the mic in advance of the conference, which is May 31, June 1, and just do some chit and chat. And I mean, ordinarily it'd be like, who are you? I think most people, but not everyone, knows who you are. So I want to spend some time on that and then talk about your advice and the work, what you'll be talking about. So let's jump in. Again, a very familiar name to most, if not all, my listeners, but not everyone knows everything, and there's some young folks maybe who haven't been introduced to you. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, the books you write, and the work that you do.
Well, Michael, I often introduce myself as a refugee from the world of academia. That some 40 plus years ago, I used to teach in a doctoral program in environmental psychology, or the effect that space has on people's behavior. And I came up with a way of using observers and motion picture cameras to measure how people move in interior spaces. I'd never worked in banking, never worked in retail, never taken a business course, never taken a marketing course, but I started knocking on doors going, this is what I can do. And nobody wanted to buy the technology from me, so I packaged a service, which became the principal testing agency for prototype stores and bank branches in the world. Our original office was based in New York City, but at our peak, we had 10 offices scattered across the world, and we worked in 50 different countries, including many parts of Canada, where from the various provincial liquor authorities to Canadian banks, merchants. I went on to build other tools to be able to look at how people shop or interact with the digital world. And of course, part of what we know in the 2022 is that the line between the physical and the digital world just doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. The company that I founded is Envirocell Global, LLC. You can look them up online. I started writing books in the late 1990s. Why We Buy, The Science of Shopping was originally published in 1999. It's out in 27 languages and is used in design schools and MBA programs still all over the world.
Yeah, that's a foundational. That was a foundational book, right? I mean, I think many of us. I was thinking back. That's I was in retail. Many of us that book was on our desks. So that's a huge accomplishment. I was looking 1999 release, right? And you had so much insight that still, as you said, this distinction. This difference without a distinction, this merging, this hybridization of retail was kind of the footprints were there, right?
Well, I think part of what is interesting is that there are the biological constants, Michael, which are all the things that stay the same. We're roughly the same height. 90% of us are right-handed. Our eyes age in the same way. But retail is also a reflection of the evolution of us. So if you think of what made a good store in 2000 and what makes a good store in 2022, those differences are a reflection of the evolution of us. And that's one of the things I have loved about being involved in retail.
Is it, if we talk about evolution, part of evolution, I guess, is viruses and global pandemics, unfortunately. Do you think that's, give me a glimpse of how you think about that. Do you think that's accelerated trends that were already there? Or do you think there's something genuinely new going on, or probably option C, too early to say?
I think there were 5 things that were going on before the pandemic hit that either got morphed or accelerated by, what is happening in our post-COVID world. One is the evolution of our connection to information. I think screens have affected the connection between our eyes and our brains. Second is the continuing evolution of gender. As we've uncoupled sex from procreation, what is male and what is female is in transition. The third issue is time and how do we manage it in our multitasking world. The fourth is what is global and what is local. The way someone shops in Badek and the way someone shops in Toronto are different, and how do we respond to it? And then the final issue is the changing evolution of money.
That's a good one. And how we use it, right? I mean,
and how we use it.
Yeah. I'll take you back to that first one. We'll have a great longer conversation on this, but the buzz these days is media networks, right? Everything from, and it's nothing exactly new, but basically, in-store media. How do you think that affects? I mean, it's seen as a positive thing for the merchants and the vendors, because as you've articulated, you were one of the first to articulate, many purchase decisions happen at the shelf, but now you've got so much going on in the store. Like, is there a point at which there's just too much going on and it creates more chaos and confusion than closing the deal for merchants?
I think that's absolutely true. We've been working on in-store media issues for more than 20 years.
Yeah, not new, yeah.
I think part of what you're looking at is the transition from media to dynamic signage. So as we get away from paper and ink and get to something different, part of what it looks or gives us the option of doing is having signage be more reflective of who's in the store or online when.
I mean, I was in a Store of the Future concept layout, and I started to feel like I was in the middle of Times Square. There's so much messaging going on, and you're right. If you can make it somehow relevant, but even then, combine that with so much. Right? Did you see this coming? The amount of self-serve that we're starting to see.
Well, I think the amount of self-serve is something that we saw in Europe as retailers responded to labor issues.
Right.
So you go to a Swedish supermarket, you go to a German supermarket, much less a Swiss. And part of what we're looking at is Canada and the U.S. is catching up to the innovations that have been going on in other parts of the world.
And okay, last question on this, because it's so fun for me to have you on the mic. Do you think that is a net result of what consumers want, or that there's just so difficult to staff? I mean, there's economics aside, we're right now in a particular moment where it's very difficult to staff stores or service locations. Do you think, like banking and ATM, you work in the banking sector, people now just get their money from an ATM? It's an accepted thing. Do you see the evolution being on a similar kind of trajectory?
Well, I think there are a couple of things there. First of all is many of the retail banks would love it if they could get out of retail.
Right.
But the problem is, for both banking and for telecoms and tech, is that in 2022, something like 10 to 20% of people walking into a retail bank are walking in angry because they've been unable to solve the problem on the phone or online.
Interesting.
And part of what is just, a truism is that we still live in an analog world.
Mm. I've had that same experience. I was with Rogers Communication for a while and understanding and listening. And by the time you're standing in line talking to a person, you've gone through, you haven't been able to work it out on the phone. You haven't been able to work it out online. So you've got a problem. Like it's 100% problem solving. Like there's nobody.
It is. And that anger is something that you can just stand at a doorway and watch somebody walk in the door. And the 1 in 5 people that are walking in pissed off.
Yeah, interesting. Let's get to your latest book. You're on, as I said, you're on stage day 2. The evening we've got Canadian Grand Prix New Products Awards. So let's talk about food. Your latest book is How We Eat: The Brave New World of Food and Drink. And give us a glimpse about what you'll be talking about coming up in a couple of weeks.
Well, when COVID hit, I decided to retire. And I had been working on a manuscript about food and beverage. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I took probably 60% of the manuscript and threw it out. And my premise is if I can help you understand the food chain and the supply chain, I can adjust your prescription and therefore help you get to a healthier version of yourself and a healthier version of our planet. And it is understanding how the store works, understanding how food works. If you're walking into a Loblaws in January and you walk into the produce section and you look at blueberries, where are the freshest blueberries in the store? Are they in the produce section? No, they're in the frozen food section and they're cheaper. What are slotting fees? Understand that the eye level is a position that somebody's bought, and that looking up and looking down is one of the ways that you get to a better, often cheaper product. I took my own advice, Michael, and I lost 25 pounds.
Wow.
And I'm a healthier, happier guy now. So this is a book about changing your prescription in terms of how you consume.
And for the retailers who will be listening, I guess the key takeaway is understand that this is in motion today, right? That people are getting more savvy about it, right?
There are a number of just poignant realities, which is I'm asking the question of merchants, who are you answerable to? Are you answerable to Wall Street? Are you answerable to your shareholders? Or are you answerable to your customers? And aren't there things in the context of the food store that we need to revisit? If you have a cereal that has a certain percentage of sugar in it, does it deserve to be on the cereal aisle or should it be on the candy aisle? Why is milk in the back left-hand corner farthest away from the front door?
That's old school, right? It's not old school, new school, just to get people to go through the store to get the necessities. Do you think that still functionally works, though? I mean, you talked about biology and habit, and so many of us are right-handed.
I think part of it is the poignancy of time. And in our meeting of our analog and digital worlds, Michael, once we hit a certain age, let's call it 40, 80% of our weekly purchases are the same thing. Why do I have to go, walk the store the same way if I've already made my purchase decision? Shouldn't packaging be reflective of the fact that if it isn't meant to scream at me from the shelf, can't I get it in a better form? One of the things, I was talking to a British package designer who was going, I could make boxes out of birdseed, not cardboard, so that when you finished it, rather than quote unquote recycling, you could repurpose it and feed it to the sparrows.
I think the frozen category got a bump up with COVID, ironically, right? Because people turned their minds to different aisles in the store, and then maybe that's going to be a net positive outcome. Do you think this is going to last? Do you think that momentum is there that's just going to carry us through? And that's, I guess, what your book is about. Is
part of what, Michael, we need to change. both personally and our food profession. There is a chapter in the book talking to Walmart's plant geneticists, which is just a fascinating topic of people engineering organic produce.
Fascinating. And you've got entire countries like Singapore with lab grown meat, right? They want to be food independent. And the only way for some countries to do that is to grow it in a lab.
It's also, Singapore has supermarkets that, for all practical purposes, are vending machines.
Yeah. Kind of just walk out technology. And that's right. I mean, so much is going on. Listen, we could talk about this for a long time. I think people are going to be very excited to hear what you have to say. I'm going to get you back on the mic after STORE, and we'll chat about a bunch of other stuff. Maybe get you on the Food Professor podcast too. So listen, Paco, thanks so much for joining me. Looking forward again to hearing you at STORE in this kind of a brief bonus episode. But lots to say, pretty provocative, great stuff. Get us thinking. So looking forward to what you have to say on June 1st.
Sounds great, Michael. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next podcast, and the Food Professor podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of M.E. LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.